Welcome to the Trellix Spotlight series. My name is Nick, and I will be your host. Today's session will focus on an overview of file and removable media protection. This webinar will be recorded. If you prefer not to participate in the recorded session, please feel free to disconnect at this time. A link to today's recorded presentation will be emailed to all registered attendees. This webinar is a brief overview covering common use cases and scenarios regarding this topic. It is not intended to be all-encompassing. If assistance is needed, please contact Trellix Technical Support. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them in the Q&A window. This webinar may run longer or shorter based on your participation, and we recommend asking as many questions as you can to make the most of this series. If the Q&A window is not displayed, click the tab at the bottom of your session window and click on the Q&A icon. We will answer the questions during the final section of this webinar. If you experience any audio issues during the webcast, please drop and attempt to reconnect. Our speaker today is David White. David is a staff customer success engineer with over 14 years with Trellix supporting data security products. Ladies and gentlemen, David.
Thanks, Nick. We'll be taking an overview of the FRP product, also referred to as FRMP, or Endpoint Encryption for Files and Folders. We'll be looking at the product suite itself, the product functionality, and the key features. The main objective of file and removable media protection is to offer a data in motion encryption solution. This is opposed to a data at rest solution, which is likewise being provided by the Trellix Drive Encryption and the Trellix Native Encryption. Its objective is to obviously encrypt data during its transit through your system and to allow you to perform encryption functions within your environment, either as a standalone or in conjunction with the data loss prevention. Likewise, you can integrate it with the data loss prevention clients and have it as a end result encryption of any time a rule is violated. How this works is through leveraging of keys, either based assigned to clients or to individual users in conjunction with policies. And so what this means is that to access encrypted data or to encrypt data, you will need access to various keys that you will go about creating within the environment itself after installation. The keys can, as I said, be delivered to the endpoints, or they can be configured in such a way to be automatically obtained when you log in and authenticate yourself within the operating system, either automatically or through password. Alternatively, it could be done through smart card interactions. Installing of the FRP product is fairly straightforward, like a majority of Trellix applications. The first point to make is that there is only one extension for the actual product itself and a single client as well. So we'll go ahead and install the extension. As you can see here, you have the build version and the signing and the usage of various subcomponents within EPO itself. This is as to be expected. So after the extension has been checked in, you can verify that it is running, and you can see the sub requirements from here. You don't necessarily need to add any of these, but always check for updates accordingly. The next thing to do is to install the software package for the actual client itself. So to do that, you go into the main catalog and you can check in the FRP client. And as we're here, we will install the Mac client as well. One last thing, we'll just double check, make sure we have the latest help extension as well, which is useful for additional help reference information added in to the EPO environment. You can install the conduit extension as well. So we'll just do now. Though we won't actually install the conduit platform package, nor will we take a look at the more than the overview of the endpoint assistant. Now that this has been successfully installed, you can verify, make sure everything is running. You'll see that there is the FRP keys, FRP recovery, FRP user actions added into the main menu sections. What is next thing to check is that you have a registered LDAP server. It is optional, but just be aware that we do heavily integrate it with LDAP for quite a number of other additional features, like the user personal key. So just make sure that this works fine, and there's not too many registered LDAP servers, which can cause a bit of delay if you're assigning lots of keys to lots of users. The next thing to look at here will be to look at the policy catalog, as we have a couple of things to just change. And we'll take a look briefly at the general user-based policy to begin with. Well, for our own testing here, we're going to turn on the explicit encrypt and explicit decrypt functionalities. These add them onto the actual Windows Explorer functionality. We won't enable the email integration or the enable search encrypted. So we'll OK those. Next, we'll go into authentication, because we'll want to make a change to the encryption key options. The unlock triggers, this is default policies, so it's worth turning these on if you are going to be using Windows Logon to unlock the authentication functionality within the FRP product itself. So if you have a single sign-on enabled where you'll sign into Windows, it will then sign you automatically into the FRP client as well. Next, we will save this. And before we go into the user local key options, we will create a regular key. A regular key being the most basic type of key that you can create. What I'm doing here is just setting the preset to none so that the filters don't hide those keys that we do create. Next, we're going to create a new key, and we will call it local user recovery. Description. We will leave this blank. Obviously, can be customized. Expiration date. We're never going to expire this. And role. This is part of the role-based management functionality. We're going to leave this as default. We'll return to this in a later video. So once we've created a user local recovery, we will then select the key, and then we can go to key assignments. From here, we can either assign it directly to a system, or we can assign it to a user. In this situation, we can assign it to a system. This way, anybody that logs into this system will get this key automatically. And then we'll be taken to the key architect layout here. Next thing to do is to just assign it to the machine in question, which will be this workstation. And that's it. What this will do as well is it will automatically run a server task. Just quick filtering of this. Process key assignments. This is run anytime you do an assignment and can be run automatically whenever you want it to be executed. We'll just run it again here. Next is to go back into the policy catalog, go into user local key options, edit the default policy, check the allow user local keys, check all of these. We won't check, well, actually we will check that one, but what we have to remember is that user local keys have to have a recovery. So we'll have this assigned to there. You can set it to use a personal key, but as we're not going to be creating those quite yet, we'll use this local user recovery regular key. As you can imagine, what this will be doing is allowing people to recover information created, encrypted on the machine when they encrypt with the local keys. For the user local keys are held local to the client machines and not uploaded to the EPO server. So a recovery key is going to be mandatory, really, to prevent any accidental encryption loss of data. Next thing to do is to find the client, run a client task, product deployment, and then we can just run this now. You can then jump to the client itself, and then we will give it a minute. And we'll see the task hit the client. There we go. You can see EEFF detect.msc and the installing of the EEFF package itself, and it will ask you to restart. It is advisable to restart the client simply because the network drivers are enforced on the client, are inserted into the stacks of the client. So as a result, a reboot is preferable. But if it's deferred, there's certain functionalities that won't kick in, such as removable local. Sorry, no, not removable local, but the network locations will be not necessarily encrypted accordingly. So we'll just give this a minute. Now that the client has restarted, going to sign in. Now that we've signed in onto the client, you can see that you do have access to the FRP console. As you can see, there's no current keys available. And what we'll need to do is we'll need to just open up the command line a second. Now that we've opened up this, just make sure that the policy enforcement is all fine. But you'll see once you've installed the actual FRP client, you'll be having direct access to the console through here. Quick settings, and these are ones that were turned on from the policy for authentication, where we check the Windows authentication. But because we haven't created a key that uses the OS authentication, then the keys themselves, the only one that should come through is going to be, here we go, this is the regular key assigned to the machine itself. And as we set in the policy, the next thing that it'll be doing is it'll be creating a local key. This is a user local key, and one that is not uploaded to the EPO server. So the next thing to do is just to follow this through. From here you can select a password protected key store and a certificate, a key store obviously is created locally on your client, so you'll need to select an authentication method. Just put in a password here. And then it will ask us for a user local key, and then a timeout. We'll leave this on infinity. And from here, it will create a store and then protect the store. And then it will create a key with a timeout of infinity and store that in the volume under the C drive. So once that's done, you will see a keys from here. You won't necessarily see the available keys in here, but if you were to just create a new folder, go to then into the Trellix, and this is the explicit encrypt and explicit decrypt. Not the best way to encrypt and decrypt, but just to let you know that this is available. So we can encrypt, and we got the user local key and the local user recovery key. So we would select a user local key, and then it'll ask you for the password. And there you go, you can see the folder is encrypted and the type of key. You can change it if you want, but obviously leaving it set to this. So that is user local keys. The next thing to do is to minimize this and then jump back into the FRP keys. So we've done the user local keys. We've done a regular key, so that leaves only one last type of key, and that is to assign a user personal key. And this, as I said, is a type of key which, when you create, you can create for a group. So you could have a group of users, and each individual user will get their own individual explicit key. In this situation, I will just assign a key to myself. Next would be to obviously select the OS authentication, so that when I log into Windows, it automatically will authenticate me through the FRP. Okay, and then that will be automatic. Password authentication can be set if you want to. You can have both, but obviously one is preferable. Password authentication does mean that, of course, you have to enter it every time that you want to access anything that has been encrypted with that key. And smart card PKI authentication is additionally only for the ATOS card OS currently at the moment. We'll just OK this, and we'll see personal key. Before we just jump into the client, I can show you the usage for any type of key. The usage shows here that the key has been set in the user local key options because it's the recovery key, and it's been assigned to an individual system. So you can understand how the keys are being used in your environment. Next, we will just jump into the client. We'll just check. You see, here we go, user local key is back, but what we need to do is authenticate. And first time round, we'll just go into the authentication, and it will ask us, well, how do we want to authenticate? If we had selected password, we'd be asked for a password box here for the user, but as we selected OS authentication, we'll just OK this. And there we go, we have a personal key for this individual user. And if I was to log off and log in as a different user, obviously then I wouldn't be able to get that key. Neither would I be able to get the user local key. I would be able to get the local user recovery key because that is assigned to the system. So control can be limited accordingly through that. But if I wanted to, I could just decrypt, encrypt, and then I can select personal key. Currently, it's available in two configurations. One is the on-premises, and the other is the mVision. With regards to the on-premises, you have the endpoint or client, which provides the actual encryption functionalities on the client itself. The conduit server, which serves as an intermediate between your EPO and your mobile devices that can run Endpoint Assistant, which in this situation can mean that your mobile devices will be able to obtain encryption keys, and thus allowing you to access encrypted data that you've done within your environment, and so access said data in through the mobile app. mVision currently at the moment does provide only at the moment the local removable media encryption, and this is obviously going to be enhanced in later builds. This is the demonstration of the FRP key role management. The first thing to do is to log into your EPO server. From here, we will go and edit the role within the EPO server. This is under server settings, and then underneath here we have FRP role settings. You'll see in here a default one. This obviously is one that cannot be removed. Next thing would be to edit and then to add a new role, and we will call it IT key admin, giving it a appropriate description as well. We then save that. Once we've saved that, you'll note the IT key admin available on here. The next thing to do is go into the EPO permission sets. Create a new permission set, and we will call it key admin. We won't add in an Active Directory because we'll just keep this simple for the logged in EPO user that we'll be creating in a second. So we'll save this, and then we'll be given all of the new permission sets. Now, for just the management of the key itself, we will go in and edit the permission set, FRP manage keys, and then we can add in set a manage key server and select IT key admin. You do have the key server available there if you need that. But for our purposes, we'll just set it so that any users set to this permission set will be able to create keys. So now that that has been done, we need to then create a user account. We'll keep it simple and call it key admin and set a password. We won't set any of these apart from, of course, making sure that the permission set is set successfully to that. We'll then save, and then we'll log out of this existing user. Once we've logged in, we will see the FRP keys. This will be the only thing that we can see given the permission sets that we have set. So the main difference is, of course, we can see those keys that are being created with the default role, and when we come to creating a new key, we have the IT key admin. So we'll OK this, and we'll see that the test2 key has been created. And if we log off, and we'll log in as the original administrator, and go into the FRP keys, we'll note here, even if we set it to none, the test2 key is not visible because this user that we're logged into doesn't have the correct permission set, and thus does not have access to the correct role to allow you to see the keys created underneath that drawer. And this means that you can separate out key management to a specific user or set of users accordingly. So with the Trellix file and removable media protection, the product functionality is separated out into three main components. The first being the FRP media protection client, which handles the USB device encryption, optical media encryption, and local and network file encryption, as well as the cloud stored within files stored in the cloud. With that comes the user personal key management, and following this you have the conduit platform. Again, as I mentioned, is a intermediate for the endpoint assistant access. Currently supported versions are 2.3 for both Android and iOS, available in the relevant stores. The FRP key features are the encryption of USB devices with when they are plugged within the FRP client. You have on-site, requiring the FRP client installed on the destination machine, and off-site, meaning that you can run them without the FRP client installed. Likewise, same goes for the optical media. You have on-site and off-site accordingly. Protection of data stored on the cloud storages, so you can audit, report, and follow up with encrypting, either enforcing the encryption or the optional encrypting of the files copied to the cloud for the relevant provider. Network encryption, of course, can mean that you can encrypt content within your network environment. This is done through the client's access to those network shares and not the actual hosting server encrypting the network shares themselves. You then have a user-initiated encryption of files and email attachments. These are the self-extracting components, which allows people to share encrypted files with the necessary authentication being required to decrypt said files without the FRP being installed. We also report on removable media, capturing users' actions, such as initialization of the devices, and it can be used for making sure that those actions are covered by the relevant encryption processes. It can be used in conjunction with the data loss prevention product as well, to provide a more comprehensive function of encryption and data loss. We use a AES NI encryption key for all encryption processes due to the general performance improvements offered by majority of said systems. Next, we'll be looking at the role-based key management. The main objective for this is to have a key administrator with an independent role so that they can manage the relevant keys for a relevant location within your organization. For example, if you had a sales department, you could give them a key administrator, and they could then manage the keys accordingly for them and not allow other people to have access to those keys, and thus meaning that there's an additional layer of security. The demonstration of which will be in the next video. The endpoint assistant, which we were discussing earlier, has an additional role when it comes to the encryption products, and that is that you can use it to recover credentials for the drive encryption, which means that the endpoint assistant is very useful, not only to the main sort of details of this, where you will be able to access FRP encrypted files on your mobile device, keys provided via the conduit server from your EPO server, of course. This is the demonstration of the FRP removable media protection. To enable the FRP removable media protection, you will need to go into the EPO server, select the policy catalog, go into the file of removable media protection. From here, you'll see the removable media policy. Edit this, and then you can set the policy and the allowed protection level. Once you know what you want to actually set, you can set either off-site or on-site access. Off-site access means that you don't have to have FRP installed on the client. On-site means that you do have to have the client installed to access the data. You can alternatively just block write operations to the device. Allow encryption does mean that you don't enforce the encryption, which means that if you cancel or defer the encryption itself, the device will go into read-only. Next, protected area. You can either select the full device or the user managed options. Full device will normally not give people any option to select how much room is left unencrypted. User managed gives people gives them the option to select how much room will be encrypted on the USB stick, leaving the leftovers in an unencrypted state. Next, authentication. You have the password, and this has a mandatory option on there so that you can enforce passwords to be set on encrypted USB sticks. Certificates can be imported through the FRP console. and mean that they will be, once imported, automatically unlocking the USB stick on insertion. Likewise, you can have set a key, which again can be set through the drop-down box, so that in this situation, personal key for a particular user, once logged in on the system, will automatically unlock the FRP encrypted USB stick. Customized UI text just does exactly as it says. Customized recovery message. You can customize this so that users can go to different locations accordingly to generate a recovery code. Next, exempt device IDs. You can add in a number of device IDs. This is using the unique identifier VID PID entry for the device as appears in the device ID when you plug the device into the machine. And you can set this for individual device, or you can set this for a group of vendors, so that those devices will be exempted as part of the encryption process. There is, by default, a level of settings within the registry of this machine, which will mean that you can set how enforced the actual USB stick is set, which means that depending on how the device is plugged into the machine, its level, if it's a removable media device, then it will be accepted as it can be encrypted, but this you can reduce or relax the compliance for that device itself. This is set in the registry key and is actually detailed in the product guide for the FRP product itself. Next, these are all of the options set. So what we'll do is we'll come out of this and we will insert a USB stick. Once you've inserted a USB stick, you will get a prompt saying, do you want to encrypt this device? So we will say yes to this, and then we'll be asked for a volume name. and we will set, in this situation, a maximum size. Of course, you can't initialize it unless you select at least one authentication method. So we'll select password. And then initialize. What is happening in the background here is that if this disk had the data already on it, it'll be copying it off to a local folder on your system, and then creating containers, taking up the set amount of room specified here, putting in the executables and various other parts of the actual FRP browser for both Windows and Macintosh systems, and then it will be returning the data that was held on the device previously back onto this device in the container that is encrypted. So we'll locate this. And you can see there's a padlock icon next to it. This is because we have the FRP installed on the system. It is behaving as if it was an on-site encrypted device. So we'll plug the device back in, and you'll get the prompt to authenticate. You can go through the forgotten password here, and it will ask you to generate a recovery code, which you could then feed into the EPO server. So once you have it plugged in, you can see the FRP here, and then you can recover the device if you so need to, if you don't recall what the password was. And here you'll see the challenge code. So what we'll do is we'll move that over there. During the initialization, an event is generated for the device, which is the recovery information for the device itself, and is sent up to the EPO server. So just be aware that that is not something that is migrated if you're moving EPO servers from one server to another. That information is held in there. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly go into the FRP recovery, go into the removable media recovery, and then we can enter the challenge code. You can select a vendor ID. And as we were typing it in, it automatically completed that because of the make of the device and because of the vendor name as well. So it has generated now, when we click on that, a recovery key or response code, and we'll enter this. And there it's accepted that. And then the next thing it will do is it will ask you to enter a new password. And you can then access the contents of the device. So that's the recovery method. The method for the user token information is pretty similar. Just from the FRP console, you would be going into this and then going through recovery under the authentication, which means if we'd created a key that used password, then we'd forgotten the password, we could then challenge code the recovery from there, and then it would generate us the recovery information and response code to set a new password for that token. Okay, thanks. Bye. This is a general overview of the FRP, File Removable Media Protection policy settings. To give a very brief information about the overall policy options with notes on various components and what they are referring to. The first policy that we'll look at is the general, and this, as you can imagine, is a option to generally configure the FRP's own integration with the Windows Explorer. So in this situation, allow explicit encrypt, allow explicit decrypt. I mean that the option is available within the actual Windows Explorer, as demonstrated here. Encrypt, decrypt. Padlock icon visibility. This can sometimes interact with various third-party applications, and is sometimes worth unchecking to check from there. There are a couple of cases of some applications out there where that you do want to add these processes so that the padlock icons, if that third-party application interacts with the Explorer as well. Enable search encrypted will obviously mean that if you are searching for the clients, when you're doing the when you're searching for encrypted files, obviously this will mean that it can simplify your search features for encrypted files. Allow creation of self-extractor. This add as self-extractor to email or create self-extractor can be somewhat useful because of restrictions down to the next one, which will be the enable sending of encrypted email attachments, which will normally attach themselves to a specific file extension, file attachment, which may not work with your browser, your email client. Next, authentication. Passwords separated into two locations because of password requirements of various methods. So in this situation, it's detailed here. Settings below are applicable only for FRP key authentications because the need for a more complex password versus the password content, such as within the encryption of an FRP encrypted USB stick. The password in there, when you set it, will need a different level of complexity. Smart card PKI. This is a option to obviously allow people to authenticate to FRP using a smart card authentication and a pass in conjunction with a PIN, offering a two-factor authentication. Virtual smart card token. The virtual smart card token, as you can imagine, is one for virtual environments where such a device can actually be used to authenticate said user. OS token. This particular option, whenever they are, when you initialize, first time round, this will mean that you authenticate through your Active Directory credentials, endpoint assistant, and this defines the complexity of the passcode that you can set within your endpoint encryption assistant, updated obviously through your conduit environment. In addition, you also have the client-to-server synchronization to your conduit environment. So from your endpoint assistant to your conduit, and thus on to your EPO FRP environment. Encryption key options, as detailed in a previous video, you select an unlock trigger so that you can have a single sign-on using the Windows authentication. Encryption key access, so if you access an encrypted file, then you're prompted to authenticate. Or if you're just accessing anything that has or does require key, then you're prompted to authenticate. Trellix key tray icon is the icon availability underneath this location here. Under the quick settings, FRP log on, log off, FRP sync. Lock triggers will indicate to yourselves if and when you lock the system, what the resulting timeout would be. So if the system's logged, you've got a number of minutes before the key is going to be not lost, but require you to re-authenticate to get access to said key. And locally, you have a cache for your keys as well, which will can and do get cleared out accordingly. And custom messages for those settings that you would like to adjust for your environment. Network. This has very limited options. Enabling network encryption will turn off general functionality for the network encryption, but doesn't necessarily unload the options that hook in, like the drivers, for example, that hook into your clients. So if you're experiencing performance issues, unchecking this may not address those issues. They may need to be disabled in an alternative option. Enable network bandwidth limit for low or slow environments. This can mean that when you have selected to encrypt a network share, your devices, all of your 5 client devices in this situation, will be copying data from the network share, encrypting them, and then returning the data back to that share. As you can imagine, that can and does cause a bandwidth spike and a slight delay on their accessibility, and obviously the time it takes to encrypt those contents of those network shares. These can be adjusted from here. It's best not to modify these without obviously consultation and thorough testing beforehand. Removable media, I think we've covered in a previous video. Optical media, again, this has been set as well. Encryption options. The encryption options themselves are ones that are going to be varied for people's environments and do require a sort of configuration within people's environments. So top advanced file handling adjusts how FRP handles those files during their encryption process, so preserving the file times of when they're created, modified, deleted, not deleted, sorry, but created and modified, so that those aren't adjusted during their encryption phase. Require authentication for listing of encrypted folders, so that provides an extra layer of authentication requirements. Use wiping when encrypting and deleting files. The encryption of files will remove the original files and the creation of the encrypted resulting files. This will add an extra layer of removal, ensuring that the file's previous unencrypted location is removed thoroughly. Enable limiting of file size that will be encrypted, and you can specify that if you have a environment that is could be prone to that particular options. Blocked processes, blocks the specified processes from opening encrypted files. the FRP blocks a process by withholding the keys required to decrypt the files. So you can actually specify in this situation, like a backup, for example. Likewise, the key request enables the process such as antivirus to exclude encrypted files if required encryption keys are not already loaded. A lot of devices, third-party applications, can and do require access to encrypted files. Can mean that you need to modify and add files, third-party applications into these options, such as the block processes, key request exclusions, and file extension exclusions accordingly. The last one, obviously, is the exclude the specified file extensions from encryption. The advanced debug option is a option that we use for troubleshooting and also for fine-tuning of the FRP client. So that does have a couple of sort of customizations accordingly. Next, location-based protection. We covered that in a previous video. Application-based as well, and the user local options. So all of these we've covered in their relevant demonstrations. Thank you. This is a demonstration of the application-based protection for the FRP product. The first thing that you'll need to do is log into the EPO server console and then go to the policy catalog. Under the FRP product, you will see application-based protection, and you can then edit the default policy if you so wish. And then from there, you can add in an application. From here, we'll just put in a name of the process, and then put in an extension of the file, and then specify a key. Select OK, save, and then wait the client. You can open up the console, and then you'll see in here the entry. Open up the application that we specified. Type in some entries in here. Put it on the desktop. Save. And the file is automatically encrypted. Decrypting can just be as simple as that. This is a demonstration of the optical media function within the FRP product. To enable this, you will need to go into the EPO server. There is an optical media policy, and edit this to bring up the configuration. You have reporting, off-site and on-site functionality with the enforce options for both on-site and off-site. Block write operations is of course available, but is preferable to use something like a DLP if you want to enforce the actual blocking of writing to DVD optical media. Once you've set that, you can go to the client, find a file that you would like to write to an optical media, go right click on it and go to the file removable media protection, add to encrypted optical media. This will bring up the console for this particular function. Select the files that you want to burn, click next, give it a project name, and then select what you would like to output it to. In this case, I'm just going to create it to a ISO, and then we're going to give it a location. Give it a password, and there we go. That has created an ISO image which you can then share either in a written optical media or individually as a file. Additionally, you can go to the file as well and create a self-extractor give it a password, give it a location if you need it to, and there. And then you have it on the desktop there. You can then share this, given your people's environments. Obviously, it's an executable. It may not be feasible to do that either, but you can then give it a password that we set in the first place, share it, and then, hey presto, they got access to the contents. This is a demonstration for the network location-based encryption within the FRP product. To encrypt a network encryption, you will need to install FRP onto anywhere up to 5 clients who can access the contents of the network location that you want to encrypt. Don't install this on the actual network host, i.e. the host hosting the actual network share. otherwise you may run into problems. To actually encrypt, you'll need the network path, and then you can go into the policy catalog and then go into location based, edit this, add, paste the network share, and then select what type of key. Now you can select either the regular key for everyone to be able to encrypt and access the encrypted data, and you can also select user personal key, where the relevant user will encrypt with their own personal key. So you can set up in this way the user's local folder and get them to encrypt with their own key. For this, we will select the user local recovery key, and that way we can make sure everyone can encrypt. You can do local key, but just be aware, obviously, that is explicit for this particular user. So we'll OK this and save. We can then go to the client. And then we can take a look and verify that this has actually taken by just doing a wake-up call to this system. You can see it's taken the policy. And then giving it a minute or two, and there we go. So it's managed to encrypt the content. And then if we take a new image, move it to there, it has encrypted the contents, and you can see from here the encryption key. Now to decrypt, the best way of decrypting is to go back in to the policy catalog, go back into the location based, and selecting decrypt. Save. Wake up the agent again. Jump to the client. It has set to decrypted, and it's decrypted the contents. So that's how you manage the network location-based, or more particularly the network shares and their location-based encryption. You can also, within this policy, specify the cloud sync. So you can specify what cloud provider you have, and then you can either allow encryption or enforce encryption. Likewise, you can select the type of key that you want to use for that. It is advisable to always check the latest knowledge base articles on the support for the cloud sync support, because obviously cloud environments can and do change quite frequently. And I think that's about it. I thank you for your time and wish you a pleasant day.
Thanks, David. As a reminder for everyone, Trellix Education Services offers exceptional training to go along with our award-winning products. If you would like to learn more, please visit the website listed on your screen to see all of our offerings. Are you wanting to learn more about upcoming Trellix product features and innovations? Join Trellix technical experts in a weekly 30-minute Tech Talk webinar series. Every week, you'll get a peek under the hood at Trellix technology and see a short demo spotlighting key capabilities from across the industry's most comprehensive portfolio of cybersecurity solutions. Now let's get our Q&A session started. I see we have several questions, but it's not too late to add your question. Please type it in the Q&A window to submit. Additionally, take a moment to fill out the survey. Your feedback and suggestions are always appreciated. Can I use FRP just for encrypting USB sticks and disable the other functionality?
So to disable the other functionality, you can use a registry key to disable the local drives and network drives. This is useful to impact the overall performance of people's environment, especially when it comes down to additional third-party interactions. I will post a link to that in the chat.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one. Can I migrate UPK from one EPO server to another?
So using the latest version of the FRP product, you can export or migrate user personal keys from one EPO to another. However, the thing to note is that the keys are converted into regular keys, and so will need to be reassigned to the relevant user once they've reached their destination.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one as well. Does FRP for Mac support all the same functionality as FRP for Windows?
So currently, at the moment, the only functionality that the FRP for Mac supports is USB media protection. This is down to just security implementations within the Mac operating system and its inability to load relevant keys accordingly and access the operating system and files held there.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one as well. And I do see we're publishing the response there, David. So you should see that link to the registry key that David was referring to earlier. All right, it looks like that's all the questions that we had for this session. I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar, and a big thank you to our speaker, David. As a reminder, a link to today's recorded presentation will be emailed to all registered attendees. This concludes today's webinar. Stay safe, everyone.